Hi, I'm Selena. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about everything that I read in the month of April. First of all, a couple of stats. So this was a somewhat disappointing reading month because I didn't have any 5 stars. I had some 4 stars, some 3 stars, and some in between, and that's pretty much it. So I didn't have anything that was super bad, but I also didn't have anything that was super good. And honestly, I'd rather have a month that is more mixed. Like, even if I read something I hated, I would rather also have something I loved, at least. But it was pretty good month. Then 2/3 of what I read was a physical book. I read 2 ebooks, which were ARCs, I believe, and then I read 1 audiobook. I read 5 fantasies this month with 1 graphic novel and 3 contemporaries. And then for age ranges, I read adult mostly, followed by YA closely after, and middle grade closely after. So more of a mix. My least favorite thing that I read in April was the second half of Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. So I started this in March, could not finish it because honestly, the first law is not my favorite. Honestly, this was like a 3-star and it was only barely a 3-star instead of like a 2.75 because of one dynamic that I'll talk to you about. And I think it's ended, so I don't think it's going to be in the last Argument of Kings anymore, and that's very upsetting to me. Anyways, this series is not my thing really, and the audiobooks for this series only make it worse for me. Like, I can get through Joe Abercrombie's writing much faster if I am reading it, because I think part of it is the time I have for audiobooks, I can much easily do something else, like watch a video or listen to music if I'm not really like super into it, and I wasn't, so it was dragging out. So when I visited Mason, who had my physical copies of the first law, I finished Before They're Hanged when I was there, and I brought home The Last Argument of Kings because I am not listening to that one on audio, and it was okay. So the Before They're Hanged is okay. It was still my same issues with the first law. Very much like plots not there, plots boring, not sure what's going on half the time, characters I don't care about. Some characters I do care about. This book, I cared about Pharaoh, which is surprising to me because I didn't care about her in book 1, but I thought she was delightful in this book, and I really liked her, and I really liked Logan, and I really liked Jewell. That's pretty much it. I thought West was better, and I thought Glocta was the same as Glocta always is, and I thought Dogman's perspectives were insufferable. So that pretty much sums up my thoughts about the first law perspectives, and I loved the relationship dynamics between Logan and Pharaoh. So in this book, they had some of the funniest scenes together that I was just like rooting for. I was like, yes, y'all are so funny together. Continue to be around each other. But I don't know. Things that this book made me think that that's probably not going to be the vibe of The Last Argument of Kings. But I don't know, I don't know. I've heard people say that this is the best book in the series. I don't see that. I've heard people say it's the worst in the series, or like still like it was their least favorite, and I think I see that because I think I like the Blade itself a smidgen more, even though the Pharaoh and Logan stuff, and the Jewell plotline, that whole thing was way better than anything in book 1. I think I liked more things throughout in book 1. We'll put it like that. I don't know. First law, man. I don't know if it's for me. Then my next 3-star was Black Brother by I can't remember the name, and I don't have a physical copy because I borrowed it from the school. But Black Brother is a contemporary about a boy who his middle school is very racist, and he has probably the darkest skin in there. So he's black, and he's actually biracial, but he looks black, so he gets racially profiled a lot. His twin brother is light-skinned, so he looks white to a lot of people, so he does not face the same prejudice and profiling that our main character, whose name Dante does. So Trey is the brother that looks white, and Dante does not, and Dante is treated very differently by the students there, by the teachers there. In the first scene, he gets the police called on him. It's rough. So it goes into racial profiling in a school, but that's definitely more of a subplot after the first bit of the book, because what he does in order to get back at the people who've continually bullied him and gotten him in trouble for doing nothing pretty much is Dante decides to learn fencing, and he competes against them. And so it's very much has the vibes of one of those team sports movies where kind of the underdogs are learning defense, and they're going up against the guys that are really preppy and like are at this really big preppy private school, and they have all these resources, but like this team has heart and they have talent, and that's that vibe was there. And so it was really cute to see. I think it moved a bit fast and I would have slowed down a little bit, but I also understand that the kids who I was reading it with, they'd only read halfway before I had to leave, but they seemed to really enjoy it. And I definitely recommend this book if you want to read a book that deals with race and issues about race. So in this case, it is racial profiling of Black children, especially in a private school setting, and also the sort of bullying that can be based on prejudice. Then I would definitely recommend this one, especially if you don't want it to, first of all, be as dark of a conversation. So some books like The Hate U Give or Dear Martin go very dark, even though The Hate U Give especially has its bright points, and they go very deep. So Black Brother doesn't do that. It's more of an introduction to these issues, and it also has more, is much more about the heartwarming family friends stuff than it is the profiling. That being said, I think that it definitely lacks some depth in even the friends department. So that was my biggest issue with it. But the writing style was really readable, and when I first started it, I thought it was going to be like one that I really loved. It ended up just being a 3-star. It is still something that I would recommend, especially to a younger audience, because the kids that I was reading it with really loved it. Then the final one, so this one is also about prejudice and more about colorism instead of like prejudice from white people. This is about colorism, about dark skin. And this book is not one that is a heartwarming, sweet read that deals with tough issues. This is the tough issues. This is a short book that deals with a lot of hard things. It's called The Skin I'm In, and it's pretty famous, so a lot of people may have heard of it. It's by Sharon Flake, and it's about a girl named Malika who, her middle school is not a very happy place for her because she gets bullied a lot for having dark skin. She has very dark skin, and people make fun of her for it, and they see it as her being ugly. And she doesn't have really any true friends there. She has this friend who is not a friend and who uses her and who is honestly just the worst influence possible for her. And it's a rough book. It's a very rough book. There are some definite trigger warnings. Trigger warning for attempted rape. I had 7th graders reading it, and I didn't have it. It was my teacher, and I think they really enjoyed it. Like, they enjoyed's a hard word. They thought the book was good, from where I was with them, and I think that we had such amazing conversations about it. They also said that when they read that part, like, I had kids crying. So it is hard, and it is difficult, and it is so worth it. I did give it 3 stars, but I think that it should probably be raised to like a 3.5 or something, because I appreciate so much the conversations it allowed us to have, and I think it is so well written. It just wasn't necessarily, it's not really my genre, and didn't have very much plot, and so for a lot of it I was kind of wondering where we were going, what we were doing. But I really do think that The Skin I'm In is a great one for middle school, if you are able to read it with your middle school, because of the content inside of it, because it is super accessible, and we have a character whose voice is very, oh my god, this Discord is gonna annoy people. I think this is a really hard book to read, but it does bring out some good conversations, and a lot of it is really worth it, so I would recommend it. I probably should move it up, because honestly it's better than some of the other things I read that I gave higher ratings. My 3.25 stars, and this is where I get into, like, I think that The Skin I'm In is better than these two, because they are more like 3.25 stars for, I don't know, just like very small aspects of it. So the first one is The Magic Fish. This is a graphic novel. This one I think probably should be a 3-star. Actually, I probably should switch this and The Skin I'm In, because honestly, The Magic Fish is it's good. So what I have a reason why it wasn't higher, my biggest criticism with it. But pretty much what this is pitched as is like a boy who is Vietnamese, and he's also gay, and he's trying to figure out how to say he's gay in Vietnamese, and it's like physically the language, and also to get across this part about himself. So it's more about his mom, and it's more about her stories the stories they would tell to each other. It's more about her life as she is an immigrant from Vietnam, and it's more about her position in the world, and it's less about the son. So I don't know, it wasn't what I expected, and I think that it's good for what it is, and I know that it's a middle grade book. I don't know that it's one that kids will find necessarily relatable because it is focused on an adult protagonist basically, but I think that it is good for reading and dissecting because it is a very beautiful story. One of the ways that this parent and son communicate each other is through folklore and Vietnamese sort of mythology and fairy tales. So that was very cool to see as well. Then my other 3.25 stars is 1,000 Steps into Night, which was an arc that I read, and I got the physical book from the library at my school, and I read that, the second half of it. First half I loved, like I really thought it was so good. It reminded me of Six Crimson Cranes a lot. It had this cute little magpie spirit side character. It had a character who was cursed and had a really big problem that she had to deal with, and it was very overwhelming for her. And then there was this like cute little romp through like different places that have different like Japanese mythological figures in them. It gave me like a little bit of Percy Jackson vibes with the Red Pyramid, something like that as well. And then it completely fell apart in the second half. So the 3.25 is more recognizing how much I loved the first half, because the second half just like it was all over the place. It brought in some elements that I really didn't like, and I didn't think, like, usually I can go with a lot of this stuff, especially in a book like this, but I was like, what in the world are we doing here at this point with this type of magic happening? I don't know. It was a bit of a mess at the end to me, but I still really thought it was cute, and I will recommend it to younger kids, but I wish that it was more like the first half than the second half, honestly. My 3.5 stars was Flipped by Wendelin Van Hassen or something. So I also read this with a book club, and it was really cute. So I actually enjoyed this so much. When I was reading it, it took me a while to get into it because I was reading the other books and I prioritized those over this one. But then I was reading it and I enjoyed it every single time, but I just wasn't picking it up. And then I needed to pick it up the week of like our meeting, and I flew through it. Like I read most of it in a single day because I enjoyed it so much once I got into it. I just needed to know what happened, and I loved it. I loved the two different voices. So this is one of the first like YA young readers books that sort of flipped perspectives that people had seen, and it's called Flipped, so you can sort of see that. And the way it plays with perspective is still not done very often in YA because it shows you the two perspectives of kids who feel very differently about each other and see their interactions very differently. We've got a girl whose name I cannot remember who has this crush on this boy who moved next door, and she's always had a crush on him, and she just thinks their interactions are very sweet, and he is very annoyed by her, and he thinks their interactions are very annoying. But their perspectives end up sort of flipping by the end of the book. And I thought it was really cute. I thought the characters were very cute. Most of them, our main character, the main girl, Julie, I think, I thought she was very cute. Bryce or Brian or whatever the guy's name was, he wasn't as cute, but I like Julie. Because she had such a cute personality, and Bryce was very like closed off and shut up. And then we had a lot of good discussions about families and classism. There's some ableism in this, so this book is not trying to be ableist, but it does use the R word. Because that was the classification at the time it was published. How it deals with the disabled character is not wonderful, but it made for some interesting conversations while I was there with the kids. And I just thought it was really enjoyable. And I think it could be one of those books that teachers really enjoy because we see all the stuff it's trying to do and we think the characters are really cute, but a lot of my kids thought it was a little annoying, so I don't know. I think the right kid would love this book, but definitely, I don't know if it has as wide appeal as it does with older people. Then I have 3 4 stars. The first 2 are both arcs. The first arc is The Jade Setter of Janloon, and this is by Fonda. I read this early, like slightly early, because I had an arc on NetGalley, and I really enjoyed this. So I liked this better than honestly some of the Greenbone Saga books, because to me, what I loved about Jade City was the city's inner workings. And we expand more into the world in the other 2 and the diplomacy. And I don't care as much about that with the clans. I want how the city works, the clan workings in the city. And Jade Setter of Janloon really dives into that. And then we had some cameos from some well-loved characters. And you just get more of a look into how the clans actually work with each other. And so it's more of a prequel, but you don't have to read it if you don't want to. It doesn't really add much to the Greenbone saga itself. It was just a nice read, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's one that I don't have very many criticisms about. It just didn't make it like to a favorite, so that's why it's a 4-star. But I genuinely think it did what it needed to do. It was a mystery. It was a short little mystery. It was intriguing. It was twisty, and it gave me insights that I wanted into the clans, and it gave me that Jade City vibe. Then the next e-arc that I read that was 4 stars was Spear by Nikola Griffiths, I think. This is an e-arc that is dealing with a female knight who tries to join Arthur's court. So we see her as she leaves her like mother behind in this like wooded clearing, and then she travels to like through all these villages and works, making her way to Arthur's court, and then she finally gets there. And honestly, the part where she gets there is my favorite chunk of this book, but I still really enjoyed the first part. This is a historical, more literary fantasy, less literary than some like She Became the Sun or All the Horses of Iceland, but I think if you like those books, there is a chance that you will like Spear, because it does have some history in it. So I've taken classes on Anglo-Saxon England, and I could definitely see elements of that in this book that I really enjoyed, and elements of like the Breton culture and stuff and mythology and stuff, and the Arthurian myth was so good. It was very well reimagined, in my opinion. It had some really cool queering of the myth, so we have a really interesting sapphic romance going on, and then we have like some polyamory with a very notorious love triangle, we'll just say. And that's just, I would honestly take a full-length novel using like from Arthur's perspective, or Lancelot's, or Gwen's, or like Nimwe's, or anyone's perspective really that can just get me spending more time with this Arthur's court, because honestly it was my favorite thing. It was the favorite retelling I've seen of an Arthurian court system, and this is how I would want it to be, honestly. Like, this is how I would want my retelling to be, and I just wanted to spend more time with it. But I thought it was really good. It was a short and sweet story, and it worked really well. So I definitely enjoyed this. This is the best, like, literary, more realistic, low magic historical fantasy I've ever seen. And honestly, it's because it's not as low magic. I think the end really leans into the magic a little bit more, but it still is somewhat low magic and somewhat historical. And then my final book is the only one I have a physical copy of here, and that is The Death of Dulgath by Michael J. Sullivan, the third book in the Rhaeria Chronicles, so the prequel series to the Rhaeria Revelations. And I really enjoyed this book. I think I liked it better than The Rose and the Thorn, maybe, or about similar, but not as much as The Crown Tower. I enjoyed it still. It was a Royce and Hadrian story. This one was much more focused on Royce, which was very interesting. And his background, which if you've read things about them, you probably know what I'm talking about there. And there is like I think there is a little bit more going on than is, like, it was a lot going on that was maybe a little bit less what I wanted, but there was this, it was basically this whole place. It was basically, we were basically taking a look at the politics of this whole place, and there were some interesting world things introduced in this that honestly didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I feel like if I had read Legends before this, then maybe it would a little bit more. I don't know, but honestly, like, the reading order for this series, like, I'm not gonna switch between series. Like, there's not one right way to read it. It was just some interesting things that I have not seen before in this world, and I expected I would. But honestly, I expect more. I'll see it in Legends of the First Empire. So I'm excited for that to feel less random, and then maybe that will make this book feel a bit better to me almost. But I was still really interested in this. I really enjoyed it. Royce and Hadrian are wonderful to be around. And so this was my favorite book of the month, even though it was only a 4-star. Because, I mean, I just love them. But honestly, Spear is close because I really, really love Spear as well. All right, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.